Now, we have two speakers today from the flotilla. I'm first honored to introduce Liam. He's originally from the Finger Lakes region of upstate New York. He's a professional mariner working around the world in sail training and environmental education, having started as a volunteer on the Hudson River sloop Clearwater 10 years ago. For 2 years, he was captain of the Clearwater. It's my pleasure to introduce Liam. Fredi is an educator, sailor, activist, and artist raised in Yonkers and New York City. She began her maritime journey as a volunteer on the Hudson River sloop Clearwater 6 years ago, and currently works in education and environmental restoration and near the water of New York Harbor. Fredi.
All right, everybody. I'm not very used to speaking into a microphone, so you'll have to forgive me at various points. Anyway, I just wanted to start. This probably goes without saying, it's probably preaching to the choir, but neither Fredi or I can really step into, well, what am I trying to say? We should, throughout all of this, always keep in mind that the voices of like the artists and authors and other sorts of people who are represented in this museum, including people like the two folks that Stan was talking about who couldn't make it here, we should always have our eyes on them and our ears on them, etc. But Fredi and I are here and happy to talk a little bit about our direct personal experiences in this most recent flotilla and the attempt to break the siege on Gaza. Do you have anything you want to say? Or? No. Okay, great. Right. Anyway, yeah, so a little bit about the flotilla. I'm sure a lot of you probably already have been following it and know a lot about it, but it was the largest civilian-led humanitarian mission at sea. It's the largest, I believe it was the 39th or the 40th of these individual attempts, starting with some just individual boats that Stan was talking about. It's the most recent of that flotilla movement, and it was by far the largest. It was larger than the one that departed in September of last year, and by the time the sort of final interception occurred was around 430 activists from around the world and 52 boats. So it was a pretty big project. There would have been even more if it were not for an initial interception, which we can talk about in a second, but in any case, that was what we were taking part in. I'm not an activist. This was one of the first actions that I've ever done. I'm a professional sailor, but I was honored to be part of this project, and yeah, we can talk about it a little bit. Anything to add? Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, yeah. Tall. That's okay. I think this is fine. Yeah, so I'm Fredi. I, much like Liam, also work in the maritime industry and have been part of small local activism in New York City since I was in high school, but nothing of this sort until this year. Yeah, I again, like Liam said, want to center, again, Palestinian voices and the voices of the people on the front lines right now. And I'm very happy and grateful to be here with you all today, speaking about our experiences and, you know, having your help center Palestinian voices. So I really appreciate that. Yeah. Liam and I both started out on the mission in Italy, and we were both intercepted in that first round of interceptions off of the coast of Crete. I don't know if folks followed that first leg of the journey, but we had over 50 boats, I think, at that point. That were sailing from Barcelona and Italy. We were a part of the Italian fleet, the two of us, on two separate boats, and about 22 vessels were intercepted. The 22 out of the I think 52 were intercepted April 29th off of the coast of Crete in Greek search and rescue zone waters with again, like was mentioned before, with the aid of the Greek government. So about a little over 170 of us, civilians, humanitarians, doctors, sailors, a lot of humanitarians and activists were kidnapped in international waters, detained and brought aboard an Israeli naval vessel, and were detained there for about 2 days before being transferred to Greek authorities in Crete. That's kind of the beginning of the story there. Yeah, I don't know. You want to keep going?
Sure, yeah. So Fredi and I were together in that first, we're not on the same boat, but we're part of that initial interception, which, yeah, again, it should be emphasized that it wasn't just, the Greeks were not merely complacent, they were actually there. Like, there were Greek naval vessels present. There was also a Greek plane flying overhead at the time. It took place in what you call the search and rescue zone. So it was international waters and subject to laws under the UN Convention of the Law of the Sea, but it is in an area which Greece is responsible for responding to basically SOS calls, which many of us put out SOS calls while we were being apprehended. They were ignored. We were brought aboard this prison vessel together, spent around 40 hours. If you hear different numbers in terms of amount of time spent on the boats or like distance where the boats were, it's because the interception doesn't necessarily happen super quickly. It took place over the course of about 5 hours. Meanwhile, the entire fleet was trying to get to Crete at the time, so people were intercepted at different points. Fredi, the vessel that she was on, was intercepted relatively early. I was one of the last to get caught. But yeah, together we were held aboard this boat until we were given over to the Greek Coast Guard near the west end of Crete. And at that point there was a lot of confusion as everybody got back on their feet, but it was determined that a few days later that the fleet would keep going on, including the boats that had survived that initial interception. And because Fredi and I have the advantage of being experienced sailors, we were given a spot on a boat leaving from Greece, or 2 boats leaving from Greece, and were able to continue on with the mission, which eventually went to Marmaris, Turkey, and from there, that was the final leg, departed from Marmaris and headed along the Turkish coast for a while, and then turned southeast and went towards Gaza, and then the second day out from the Turkish coast, while we were in the Cyprus search and rescue zone, the Israelis military started picking us up at that point, and apprehended all the ships over the course of a little bit more than 24 hours. It took them a while to get us all. There were a lot of us. We kept going. I believe the closest anybody got was around 90 nautical miles from Gaza, which does place this, even the second interception, as a kind of unprecedented intrusion of Israeli military power into the rest of the Mediterranean. Previously, the furthest that any of the flotillas have been intercepted was around 175 nautical miles. The second interception started around more than 200 nautical miles away from Gaza.
230.
230, yeah, was the first boats that started getting picked up. For those of you who are unaware, basically international waters start around 24 nautical miles from the coastline of a given coastal state. Once you're in international waters, basically what the Israelis were doing to us is totally illegal. It's piracy, essentially. We don't like calling them pirates because pirates sort of sound cool to a lot of people these days, but it was piracy. They were kidnapping us, in many cases in a totally unannounced way. During the first interception, they didn't say who they were. During this interception, some groups were told, this is the Israeli Navy, but in any case, it's an it's an illegal act, what they were doing, and was also being done in a way that implies a general disregard for the sovereignty of other states, and represents an unprecedented intrusion of the Israeli Navy into the rest of the Mediterranean. The first interception where Fredi and I were first caught between Sicily and Crete was around 650 nautical miles from Gaza, which is extremely far away. It's like more than 3 times as far as any previous interceptions took place. So it's a general indication of them continuing to push the edge of sort of what they can get away with based on the complacency of other states. Of course, Greece is, as it was in previous flotilla missions, quite complicit and allowed them to do that. It was notable that they did not start intercepting us until we had left the Italian search and rescue zone. But in any case, those of us who were captured in the second round of interceptions, we had been joined by comrades from Greece and Turkey, so there were around, once again, more than 50 boats and more than 400 of us, so it took 2 prison boats this time to pick us all up. I was back in the same one that Fredi and I had been in previously, and there was a significant escalation of violence compared to the first interception. And in general, in terms of the way people have been treated during the previous Global Sumud Flotilla last year. Once again, it bears repeating, it's nothing compared to what Palestinians have to deal with on a regular basis, and what the Palestinian hostages currently being held in occupied Palestine are confronted with. But there was a definite escalation. And yeah, words like torture have been used by the media. That is totally correct. 2 of my crew members were tased in the face. When they were, yes, yeah. So yeah, people were brought on board the prison ship and basically had each individualized little run through a shipping container before being let out into the enclosure where people were held, and essentially everyone during this point was subjected to violence. I think there was one relatively elderly woman who was, I think, the only person who didn't at least get hit in the face once, but everybody was subjected to this, and it's, there were on our boat 35 confirmed fractures, possibly a few more broken bones. There were 11 definite cases of sexual assault. There were 3 cases of people being injected with unknown substances, which that was a new thing. Don't really know. I still don't know what that was. I think it was 5 traumatic head injuries as well. And this was stuff, luckily, because we were part of a humanitarian mission, we had a lot of doctors with us. Didn't have any supplies at that point, but we had to take care of each other as best we could with, basically nothing. Anyway.
I want to just note, in addition to that, as well, that in addition to all of the violence that was enacted upon the activists of the flotilla, the conditions aboard the prison ship, and I'm sure in the prison as well, were inhumane as well. They refused to give us enough food and water for everybody aboard. They kept, we had many extreme temperature changes and having to sleep on the just like solid steel of the deck of the ship. They deliberately kept us awake for long periods of time. They refused to give people who needed chronic medicine their medicine. So they deprived us of food, enough water, and medicine for people's livelihoods, as well as all of the actual violence that they committed upon the people of the flotilla. You probably want to talk more a little bit more about the second interception, but what I want to say about that is that again, to bring it back to the greater picture, is that the amount of people that were intercepted in the second time around, when they were the second interception closer to the shores of Gaza, there were about over 430 activists that were kidnapped and detained, which is about almost equal to the amount of Palestinian children that are imprisoned in occupied Palestine today. Just to put into a little perspective, in the first interception and the second interception, our activists were held from anywhere from 30 to almost 80 hours in prison and subject to abuse and torture and inhumane conditions. But again, this is just a fraction of what Palestinians face every day, whether in Israeli prison or not. At a much larger scale, and with a lot more violence that we don't necessarily see on national television.
Yeah, I mean, I could go on, but I think the main thing is basically, if you've heard some bad things in the news, yes, it's true, it happened. The only thing that I can say about it is luckily our captivity was really blessedly very brief. All told, from when I was captured to when I was put on a plane to Turkey was only about 3 days, which in part had to do with, thankfully, it does seem that in this flotilla, it has generated enough attention, at least particularly in Europe, to galvanize some political pressure, and I hope that political pressure that enabled us to be released. Unfortunately, there are still thousands of Palestinians being held, many of them being held totally arbitrarily, so-called administrative detainees, which is just a euphemism for people that have been, are being held for no reason. And so hopefully the political pressure that's being generated in Europe right now can continue on. And I believe that it is. There's currently ongoing protests in Italy preventing arms shipments from leaving Italy and going to Israel. And we can talk more about ongoing actions. Thank you to our comrades in Italy. The Italians that we sailed with were all really great people, and I'm glad that they're, the folks at home there are still working on that. But in any case, we were able to be released, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done.
Just to the same vein of that we made it back home safely, and our job is to continue that work, and which is why we're here.
So that was a little scattershot, but I guess if people have questions.
Yeah.
Is there any mass or group that is litigating? I know that's an impossible task, but it's done for damages, for reparations for the people who were, I'm sure, harmed traumatically for the rest of their lives.
It was a bit. As soon as we arrived in Turkey, everybody who had been captured went through a process with both people who were part of the Global Sumud Flotilla organization and then also members of the Turkish government to gather evidence. We all went through forensic medical interviews and were all asked to give statements. And so Turkey intends to try to go to the International Criminal Court, or generally about the treatment of the flotilla, and then the organization itself, Global Sumud, will be pursuing its own legal proceedings in different countries in the EU. I'm not sure about in the US. Yeah.
I'm curious what happens to the boats, and the reason I'm asking that is that there will be future flotillas. The boats have owners, and that may have a bearing on whether they're willing to participate or not.
Yeah.
Could you summarize the questions for the camera?
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
sure,
yeah.
sorry. Do you want to?
The question was, about what generally happens to the boats and the consequences for the owners of these vessels that embark on this mission. The large amount of boats that are that take part in the mission are actually owned by the organization. They are either donated or bought by the organization, so they're not like individual people with their own boats going. They're all owned by the organization. A lot of the things that happened to the boats that were actually out there, the IOF deliberately damaged most of our vessels. Some sank to the bottom of the Mediterranean. A lot of them were just left adrift with a lot of damage to the engine, to the sails, to the rigging, to the hull, to the boat in general. All of our boats that went out on this mission that got intercepted are either sunk or adrift with a lot of damage. There is actively a rescue mission happening to recover all of the boats that are still adrift and afloat. During the first interception, we had the help of two NGOs, two organizations, Open Arms and Greenpeace, and they aided us a lot in that first round of recovery of boats. So they recovered a lot of our vessels and towed them, if they hadn't already sank, to shore. And a similar thing is taking place right now. So hopefully they are able to recover any boats that are out there and fix them up and make sure that, one, we get our property back, and two, that they, 50 boats left adrift in the middle of the Mediterranean is a dangerous thing to have out there, especially with the amount of traffic that is out there. So hopefully they succeed in their mission of recovering all the boats. But if that answers your question. Yeah.
Thank you.
Should I call it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. I just wanted to, and I'm going to stand up so everybody can hear me, just so you don't have to reclaim it. But I wanted to ask, I have a lot of questions, but I'll ask this one because I really want to know. I think you guys probably knew you're going to be subjected to a lot of violence just for doing this, because Israel commits senseless violence all the time and is never held accountable. So did you guys undergo any kind of like training in to like prepare yourselves for that violence? Like, was there ever any discussion, like people being like, well, what if some, IOF soldier, like, what if I fight back? And people were like, no, you can't do that. Just take the punches and roll with it. Like, was that a discussion that you guys had going into it?
Repeat the question.
Yes. The question was basically, what did we go through preparation or training to deal with the violence that we, knew we were going to be subjected to? The answer is yes. Everybody who sailed on the mission, regardless of their role, went through pretty much almost like a week, basically, of different kind of trainings. We were talked to a lot about how to talk to the media, which I'm not necessarily doing a good job of remembering all of those lessons right now.
The question was more towards the reason for the civilians who joined this mission, why we did that, why we made the choice to put our lives at risk or to put ourselves in a dangerous situation for this direct action. And my answer to that personally is there are many reasons why I chose to do it. I think that personally, as a U.S. citizen, I feel like I know that my government is not only complicit but actively aiding and funding the genocide against the Palestinian people. I think that as U.S. citizens, we have a very, very direct link to this cause because our tax dollars are paying for the genocide that is happening right now. That is one reason. I also very strongly believe that all of our struggles as oppressed people all over the world are interconnected, and that none of us are free until all of us are free. And I think that it is our duty to fight back in whatever capacity our capacity allows. And I personally have my skills as a mariner, and I have the privilege to volunteer on a mission like this, and therefore I felt like it was a harmonious balance of things that allowed me to join the mission, and as well as just my general morals to keep going, and my personal connection to the struggle. Yeah, that's me, if you want to talk.
No, I mean, same answer. Here's stand up for a while.
Did I hear you right when you said that they followed you all the way as close as to the waters of Sicily, to Italy?
No,
If you could repeat the question.
Yes, yeah. The question was whether they followed us to the waters of Sicily. So, to give yeah, if it was confusing or to give a better geographic understanding, essentially there was a group of boats that left from Barcelona. They sailed to Sicily. They rendezvoused with the group of boats that me and Fredi had been working with, and then we departed, sailing from Sicily to Greece to rendezvous with boats that were departing from Greece. They intercepted us between Sicily and Greece. We were in international waters, so we were not in the territorial waters of any nation, but they started intercepting us as we passed from what's called the search and rescue zone, the Italian search and rescue zone, into the Greek search and rescue zone, and that is when they started intercepting us because of the Greeks were helping them. Yeah, that's that geographic. Does that answer your question? Okay, great. So no, they weren't anywhere near Sicily, really.
Can I ask you a question?
Okay.
I don't know. That's up to.
We're not running this thing.
Question?
You asked me a question?
No, can I ask them two questions?
30 cents per question.
I'm good for it. First question is, it sounds like this was a much larger flotilla than ever, intercepted further from Palestine than ever, the abuse was worse than ever, yet nobody's hearing about it. Like, there's much less publicity than there was last year. Do you have any sense of why that is, and if there's anything to be done about it?
Yeah, I think there's a few reasons. I think that a lot of the coverage of Gaza has been de-emphasized because of the ceasefire, which of course, as I'm sure everybody in this room knows, is not a ceasefire. So there's been a de-emphasis, and I think also there's a lot of attention on the war with Iran. And that makes it difficult. And then the other thing is that there is a lot of I'm not a tech person, but I know from talking to some people within the organization, there's a lot of algorithmic suppression. Things that are shared on social media about the flotilla are being suppressed, and specifically on TikTok, which is now I don't really understand the thing, but some element of that company is now basically owned by Israel, and so they so they in general social media platforms. Are being expressed, and then traditional media is mostly just ignoring it, as far as I can tell. Like when we arrived at the airport in JFK, there was a lot of attention there was media there, but none of it was traditional media. They just, they don't seem to care. So in terms of how we can do it, we can do things like this and just talk face to face and try to have conversations with one another and try to do as much as we can to sort of overcome that algorithmic suppression. So, yeah.
So my other question was, are people getting treated for trauma who went through this? Is there, what's in place?
Sure.
Can you repeat that question?
Yes, the second question was, are people being treated for their trauma? Yes, my short answer is yes. The people who were released from Israeli prison got, for both interceptions, were the people that needed medical assistance were taken to hospitals as soon as possible on our ends, and had to, if they needed to continue treatment, received that treatment basically right when we got released. And as far as longer term trauma, there was a team of therapists and mental health people that were a part of the organization that were there before, during, and after the mission that are there for us. So kind of as within the organization that we were a part of, there was a lot of care put into the beforehand and after dealing with the trauma, physical and mental, of the participants.
I also have two questions, if that's all right. My first question is, so you got your little week of training, you joined up with a big group of people from all over the world, and maybe everybody doesn't speak the same language, but you had to be a crew on a boat together and also be really doing some high-level kind of coordinated operations. So if you could talk a little bit about the way that you communicated with people, the kinds of relationships that you formed, if you were with people that you'd never met before, or if you knew some of them, just sort of the interpersonal dynamics of how it was. And then my second question, I'll just get them both over with, is do you worry that now that you've done this and you're here, that you are being surveilled or targeted in or followed in any way, even to the point of threats on your life, or just whatever you're doing in the course of your life, if that is something that is possibly happening?
And don't forget to repeat the question. First question.
Remember about the questions. The first question was just
Interpersonal.
yeah, interpersonal relationships and dealing with yeah, a lot of intercultural stuff and also just dealing with I guess the pressures of being on a boat with a bunch of people you don't know necessarily and not always sharing your first language. And then the second question was whether we are concerned about our own, basically our safety having returned to the US and whether we're being followed, surveilled, or threatened in any way. Do you want to answer either of those or talk about it?
I'll answer the second question first. I definitely a worry for sure. Personally, I was worried about that before the mission, during the mission, after. Just in the history of the United States and political suppression and movements like this have been suppressed in the United States by a lot of means in the past. We 16 of the flotilla members flew from Istanbul, Turkey to JFK Airport last Sunday. And the idea behind that really was to stick together because we knew that there was possible scrutiny at customs. And so we have been thinking about that for a while, and it is continuing to be top of mind. Six of us were held for secondary screening at customs for an hour and a half.
In JFK?
In JFK, yes. And so, yeah, the short answer to your question is yes. I am worried about that and thinking about that, and it is something that was already giving us trouble at both airports that we were at. Yeah, I don't know if you want to answer the first question or the second or both.
Sure. Yeah, I'll talk about the first question for a second. There was a lot of efforts made to try to smooth out intercultural differences. Part of the training that we went through, all of that training, for instance, there were a lot of technical difficulties, but it was being actively interpreted into like 5 different languages when it was happening. And there was a lot of effort made to try to ensure that people were able to communicate. And just like structurally, each boat had a person whose essentially assigned job was to manage any interpersonal conflicts that arose during the course of the mission. Besides the captain or besides the people who were in charge of each boat, there was somebody who was doing that. With that said, it was a challenge. I mean, it was logistically, the entire thing was really remarkable, especially considering that it was done by hundreds of volunteers. Or really, actually, like thousands when you count everybody who helped with prep and helped from afar. So, and there were times there were interpersonal conflicts, but I think there was also a huge amount of solidarity and a huge amount of joy in working together. And it was a big demonstration, I think, of, in and of itself, whatever it accomplishes. Hundreds of people from around the world, from lots of different countries, really came together with the goal of trying to help the Palestinian cause. So. Yeah, it was a little chaotic, but it was good.
Is everyone now out of Israeli prisons?
The question was if everyone is now out of Israeli prison. All of the flotilla activists that were a part of this spring mission, yes, have been released. There are still, I believe, 5 flotilla organizers that are held in prison in Tunisia right now. So that our people are still in prison and not necessarily in Israel. But yeah. Go to the back.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions.
Yeah.
I don't know if we cut it off at some point.
I have a question and a comment. First of all, you mentioned that you came into this as mariners with very little experience as activists, which, by the way, I really honor that. That's quite a step to take. The question being, if I was an activist with very little experience as a mariner, would I be encouraged to join the future flotilla? And then, as far as the comment, it was brought up about one of the things that is also happening is the attempt to interdict these weapons shipments going to Israel. The comment is that 2 Fridays ago, this happened, an action happened in Port Elizabeth, New Jersey,
yeah.
which is the third largest port in the United States. 90% of 100,000 tons, 90% of the weapons going to Israel that are not directly transferred by the military are going from that site, which, by the way, is probably, I don't know, 20 minutes, half an hour from Delaney, which I just came back from yesterday. I was part of that action. We talked about algorithm suppression. It's definitely happening with that, but my point being, I see and very much felt as we were doing this action that this is kind of another side of the coin that you are very courageously taking up in terms of bringing aid there. So we need to organize around that port is basically the point. But thank you.
I don't know. I forgot the first question. That
Yeah, sorry, what was the- oh, yeah,
Have
yeah.
no skills, did you go?
Oh, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. The question being, if you're an activist who doesn't have any sailing skills, can you participate in the next flotilla? The answer is yes. The vast majority of people there did not have prior sailing experience, and Fredi and I both work in sail training and education, and the people who know things will teach the people who don't know things. That's how it worked this time, and that's how it'll work next time. There's lots of journalists, media people, political actors of various kinds. Yeah, there were all sorts of non-maritime people who were present.
I don't know how if.
Yeah, is there like a time limit?
Well, we have another chunk, but keep going.
Just a follow-up to
Yeah,
that
come.
specific
We
question.
don't have to leave by any time, so you can stay here till like 7 if you want.
The answer is no.
Yes, okay, great.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask a follow-up to that specific question, is that okay?
Sure.
Sure.
So, Pete, you said, people are welcome and whatever experience they have. How do people, is there a website or, okay, and then are people vetted, and can you just say a little more about how one would actually join?
Yeah, absolutely. The question is about how the specifics and actually joining in, if there's a website. Yes, there is a website. It's globalsumudflotilla.org, and you can find all of the information that you seek on that website, and the application is on that website, and all of the processes are on that website. So I actually encourage you all to go to that website, just not only for that purpose, but also for more information on the mission and further actions that they're doing.
You briefly mentioned that there were some positive legislation in some countries. Could you give any details about, what's happening and how we can support from here?
Yes, the question was about positive legislation. So as far as I'm aware, there's no legislation, but there has been, essentially what happened is after Itmar Ben-Gvir put out a video of a lot of us being forced to kneel in stress positions and so on, there was a lot of outrage in Europe that did actually translate into basically statements by governments. Wasn't legislative action per se, but there were some unprecedented statements by governments. For instance, Ben-Gvir is now banned from setting foot in France, according to the French government. Which baby steps. It's just the beginning. It's not enough, but that's an example of something that has happened. And then it also has spurned further actions. I think it has helped bring media attention to the ongoing, the attempts to block weapon shipments out of Italy. So there have been no laws passed. I mean, I don't think governments really move fast enough for that to be happening anyway. But there have been statements by governments, including some unprecedented ones. And apparently, I only just learned this today, but apparently the U.S. Embassy in Israel did say something about like Israel, like you can't, make people kneel like that. I don't know what they said. They were not there at the port. They did not provide any help to us. To be clear, neither interception was there any U.S. government support for us whatsoever. In case there was any doubt, I'm sure there wasn't, but that didn't happen. But apparently they did basically reprimand them, which is kind of, I think, unprecedented. Anyway.
Would you ever join the flotilla again? Or recommend it to someone else? I don't know.
Repeat the question.
The question is, would you ever join again or recommend it to somebody else? I think I think everybody, I encourage everybody to do their own research and to visit the website and assess their own skills and ability and capability to do a mission like this. So I think anybody that feels compelled to and that it feels like it is right for them should definitely do it, which is how I felt when I made the decision to do it. But whether I would do it again, I don't know. I'll have to figure that out if it does happen again.
I guess I would encourage anybody who's feeling really excited about the prospect or is interested in it to think about. I'm sorry, I don't know our comrade's name in the back who's talking about Port Elizabeth, but the front line is everywhere. This is a conflict that you really can act from anywhere, and the things like the fact that a huge amount of these munitions and arms are coming out of Port Elizabeth. Sorry, I'm not doing a very good job speaking into the microphone. Which is, very close by. And there are all sorts of actions that one can take to think about those things. In terms of the flotilla specifically, would I do it again? Just this second? No. Pretty sure I have a couple of broken ribs, but if it happens again the same time next year, I definitely would think about it, yeah. I think one thing that has to be brought into consideration is that the Israel government, they are constantly playing a game where they do care about media representation and they do care about narrative, but they are always, there is a lot of talk as we were, would it be politically expedient for them to kill us instead of capturing us, or to kill one of the lead boats so the rest of us turn away? We didn't know, and we didn't know what they were going to do the whole time, and so you do have to think about that, and you have to be sort of at peace with that when you're going. So yeah, just think about that. Sorry, I think there's a fellow who's had his hand up for a long time.
So, going off of what you kind of just said about it being potentially dangerous to do this, given that these terrorists can just kind of take you out of the water with impunity, how did you get out? Did they let you leave, or was there some sort of intervention?
You might know that. I didn't know what was going on. So.
Yeah. Between the two interceptions, the first one, yes, sorry. The question was, given how dangerous the mission was and how far Israel is willing to go to reprimand activists for doing legal acts of humanitarian work, and how they let us go. Between the two interceptions, the first one, as far as us as prisoners go, we didn't know anything. We kind of were just at the will of the IOF and the people who were imprisoning us. So after the fact, it was made clear that there was some sort of, I don't know the details of this per se, but there was some sort of deal made with, obviously, the Greek authorities and the Greek government to release us into their territory, into their land. As far as the second interception, I also, not much information was really shared on that, and it was really very much as a lot of this felt was very like up to the will of the oppressor. Yes, they released us, but yeah, for you, I mean, you can talk a little bit more about like what it looked like for you all to get released from occupied Palestine, but yeah, I think yeah, that's.
I don't know. My understanding is that it had to do with pressure specifically from Turkey. Turkey were also the people that took us after the second interception. My understanding with the first interception was it was Greece trying basically sort of to cover their ass. They had been the bad guy and they were worried about continuing to be the bad guy, so they were kind of like, don't take them to Israel, just give them to us and we'll treat them a little bit better and hope that people don't get angry about this, which people still got angry about it. But in the case of the second one, yeah, I was really surprised to get out as fast as we did. And I think that it had something to do with actions by Turkey. But honestly, probably if you look through the international news and try to figure it out, you'd have a better answer than me, because they certainly didn't tell me anything. Yeah, that's my understanding as well. And yeah,
They
that
won't do that again.
No, yeah, he produced this video of us all in stress positions that mainly for his base in Israel, and I'm sure that probably they ate it up. I don't know, but it kind of backfired on him in the sense that it generated a lot of negative press outside of Israel. So. I think I'm going to get a ride back to the city with
What happened to all the material?
yeah. Sorry for the. Yeah, what happened to the aid? Yeah, so all the boats were carrying aid, various kinds, mostly non-perishable foods, medical supplies, and school supplies. It was left on the boats, so it's wherever the boats are. If the boat sunk, the aid sunk. If it drifted up in Cyprus, that's where it is. So.
Yeah. So. Again, everything that was on the ships stayed on the ships, whether they sunk or not. So all of my personal belongings are still on the vessel that I was on, and any belongings that I had with me when they kidnapped me were taken from me. So yes, all of my stuff is gone.
Yeah, same. It's all. It's either adrift in the Mediterranean or it's presumably in the garbage somewhere in Israel.
So you've mentioned a couple times that hideous video with Ben Gvir gloating as people were tortured. And I think you hinted that you were in that picture. Were one of you in it? And if so, what was that like in that stress position? And if not, what did people tell you about it?
Yeah, so I'm in that video. You wouldn't be able to recognize me because it's just my butt in the air. But yeah. Yeah, the stress position thing is it's one of their favorite tools. It doesn't leave injuries like particularly visible, but basically they make you kneel on the ground. Maybe your hands are behind your back, or if you're lucky, they're in front of you so you can sort of support some of your weight. All of us were put in that position at various times, including Fredi during the first interception. But yeah, it was during the making of that video and the disembarkation of both of the ships that many of us were put in that position. And they were making us listen to the Israeli national anthem on repeat, and somebody managed to keep their head on enough that they counted how many times, and so we started figuring out how much time, but I think we were in that position for about 3 hours continuously. And yeah, without being dramatic, I would say it was extremely unpleasant. Yeah, a lot of people, and they made a lot of like older people who were not in good shape do it as well. So it was extremely painful. It was also really hot. We were in the full sun. A lot of us ended up with like this spot on our lower back that was totally sunburned. So yeah. Anyway, it's torture is what it is. It's a sort of clever torture that doesn't maybe look like it if you're just seeing it for a second, but it's very painful.
The acts that were done upon us under Israeli in Israeli prison were, again, a fraction of what Palestinians face in occupied Palestine, and that are not necessarily covered the way that our mission was covered in the media and in the global eye. So it is a shame that it has to be done this way, but if our, if it takes us, our bodies being on the line to bring light to what Palestinians are actually facing and have been facing for the last 80 years, then that's grateful that we were able to bring light to it.
Stop Israeli torture of prisoners! Stop Israeli torture of prisoners! Stop Israeli torture of prisoners!